Hi guys, it's me Jack from the Social Yet Distanced podcast. Today we're going to be talking with Dustin Pickering. I'm not going to tell you much about him here. I'll let him introduce himself, but I'll read you a quote from the preface of his new book called Crimes of the Extraordinary, Micropoems by Dustin Pickering. And it states here, if poems are moments, monuments, as Sylvia Plath stated, then it's safe to say that Dustin Pickering's latest collection of micropoems pays paradoxical homage to a diverse and complex array of monumental topics through the use of his most concise and reductionistic form. Indeed, Pickering takes on topics as broad as death, life, need, political frustration, psychological trauma, and self-actualization. Okay, hey Dustin, it's Jack. How are you, buddy?
Doing all right, Jack. It's good to see you.
My pleasure, my friend. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of your background, but let me introduce you first. This is Dustin Pickering, ladies and gentlemen. He is the author of a book called Crime of the Extraordinary, and it's micropoems by Dustin Pickering. And so we'll be talking about that today and giving you an opportunity to go out and purchase and read some new work. So thanks for bearing with us on that. Tell us, Dustin, a little bit about yourself and how you got to be a prolific writer like you are. I mean, I've seen you for years, and I know that you've been writing for a long time and that your work gets out there. So tell us a little bit about that whole transition for you.
Well, I think I began reading at an early age because I was put in a program for potentially troubled youth because my family situation was lacking. And so I was maybe about 4 or 5 years old. I was under a tutor in Mississippi named Mrs. Ott, and she taught me to read, and she taught me all the basics and everything. And I think I probably fell in love with it through her because I've always remembered myself to write. I wrote a children's story when I was about 7. I think I was about first grade, and it was about a wagon that the wheel gets lost, and the kid runs around looking for it, and finally it shows up where he least expects it to see it, and it's behind a tree. It's an interesting little story for a 6 or 7-year-old to write. And gradually I got into about 15 years old. I got into Sylvia Plath. I got into a lot of the romantics, and Leonard Cohen was especially just amazing to me. I loved his music and his poetry. And that helped me develop an abstract kind of style. And I also had a friend named Thomas at the time who had a very abstract style. He wrote very impressionistic, abstract kind of thing. And so I developed that style from looking at his poetry, and I was like, hey, that's kind of interesting. And I think he was trying to be cryptic and like Kurt Cobain, so I think that was his goal. But I picked up from him. And gradually, just over the years, I've read so many poetry books, so many poetry collections. One of my absolute favorite poets, Federico Garcia Lorca, is he's just amazing, And I've read his collected works like 2 or 3 times. I've read Langston Hughes a few times. I read his complete body of poetry a few times, and many others. It's just to me, poetry is just just a dealing with the depths of the soul. And I think there's like a competing forces. I see that as a metaphor, competing forces within both society and the cosmos to create. And I think that poetry brings all those forces together, coalesces them, and drives them into a kind of creative passion. And so that's one of the things I love about poetry.
Well, I wonder,
Passion.
I hear you talking. It's amazing because I have a similar story in that as a child, I was kind of lonely and isolated myself for whatever reasons. And one of the things I started doing was, as I learned to write and read, I started digging into things that were a little bit over my head just because of where I lived in my environs. my dad was an attorney, and he read a lot of really cool things like Bukowski and some of the old classics and stuff. So I would try to emulate that. And the very first story I remember writing was so trauma based. It's ridiculous. And I write the exact same way now. But,
Hmm.
you know, that story was called Freddie the Rat, Freddie was trapped and he couldn't get out. And it was really a sad ending for Freddie. And then the following one that I wrote was about me getting put in prison wrongfully. Now, keep in mind, I'm 7 or 8 years old, right? And so I'm put in prison, and I developed a friendship with this cockroach, and everybody in the prison died, and there was nobody to feed me. And I was faced with this moral dilemma on whether I was going to eat my friend or not. And that's pretty twisted shit, I mean, as far as I'm concerned. And
Wow, that's like Vlad the Impaler going on
yeah, I
there.
mean, it's really weird stuff that I
Hmm.
had its impact, but what it showed me was I could release a lot of that loneliness
Hmm.
through creating other worlds. And my writing style for poetry is kind of the same way. I vomit everything on a page like I'm writing a journal, and then pare it down and then make it flowery, or fit whatever format I feel like it might need, or whatever. But I think that that's a common thing. I mean, that's my whole point. Is it's like I keep hearing that same story where everybody was isolated or traumatized or whatever in their own way, and it's led to this creative bountiful of like humanity that's I don't know where else you would get it. I really don't, unless you're in the process.
Right. I think that isolation leads to a imagination's kind of opulence, and it pours itself out, on the page.
Right. I think you're absolutely right about that. And other things along the way will teach you to things that help reinforce it, like learning English in school or going to higher grades in writing and creative writing and things like that. I think those all reinforce that whatever the hole is we're trying to fill inside ourselves. Um, and then at a certain point, at least for me, it becomes more about how do I project my words out there to make an impact? Not that I want to be read, but that I want somebody to walk away with what the message was and feel something from it, or take action based on it, or realize, have some epiphany of their own. That's the role I want to play. I'm not a healer, and I'm not even healed. I'm just a guy who
Right.
works every day to be better, and realizes that takes action and not just a bunch of flowery words, which I can do that all day long. I was a bad guy for a long time, and that was my tool.
Hmm.
I could blend in wherever I was, and um, I think that helps me
Right.
do that the same way now. And I think it's a very common story. So tell me a little bit about the progression. Once you started writing and getting that release, where do you go from there as far as like education and family and the support around you? How did that build up for you?
Well, I have the support of my aunt, financial and emotional support. I have a lot of good friends. I started college. I graduated high school and I started college when I was about 18 in a community college. And the most I got out of it was I met a Marxist professor named David Smith, who became a good friend and mentor to me. And I ended up having to drop out because of mental health struggles. Didn't make it through. I never went back. I tried again in Alvin Community College, but I just couldn't do it. I don't know what it is about. I guess it's the social atmosphere that kind of
Right.
turns me away or makes me frustrated. I have a lot of social anxieties. Uh, but I found that reading alone is like the most fulfilling thing for me. I just enjoy it, love it. And but I've had the support of my family, and my aunt particularly has been very helpful. Uh, Friends around me and people who have projected my work into the world and talked about me in nice ways. I would hope have kind of helped me out quite a bit, and boosted my ego and so forth. I mean, you mentioned earlier, like there's this like gap. I was like hole or something. I was going to say that I remember reading Sylvia Plath's journals, and she talks about having an inferiority complex.
Right.
She's at Smith College. She's like one of the top colleges in the U.S. And she's studying, and she's feeling an inferiority complex. And I do think there's some truth to that statement in the Bible about grief coming, wisdom creating grief, and so forth. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think that's what you feel so small in such a immense world, in such a massive, immense world. And but you kind of develop an inferiority complex, but you also, you're looking for something, an understanding or a creative output of some kind from the world. You're trying, I don't know if it's like a seeking of validation or if it's some kind of, you know, uh, fulfillment of in your own right. I mean, I don't know. How do
Yeah,
you feel
I don't
about that?
know. I mean, it's funny because when I think about the most talented slash accomplished writers, poets I know, they are also the ones who complain the loudest about their concerns about how bad their work is.
Hmm.
And it's really frustrating to me because I see the progress and the perspective and the impact that these people are having on people out there, and it's not really, they're still fighting the same battle they were fighting with themselves to get to where they are, and
Hmm.
it's not necessary at that point. You don't have to judge yourself all the time, but we do. And I think
This
that
is being tasked.
well, and that's where, that's where the trauma and the history comes in, I believe, is it kind of formulates our relationship with everything around us and the way we feel and what we do and how we think about ourselves, you know, out loud or not. And that's the thing. It's like if I had
Right.
the talent that some of these people had and had reached a certain point, granted, my goal might not have been the same, but if I had reached that level, at some point, when does it become enough? You know,
Hmm.
and I don't have an answer to that for anything, much less, poetry. And I feel about,
Right.
I feel self less than self-confident on many, many ways about my own life. So I understand that, I can always do better. I can, I'm a workaholic, I don't take care of my health the way I should for somebody who's as damaged as I am, So
Hmm.
I think I think we're all kind of guilty of that, but I think it all starts with that initial trauma and how we, fill a hole maybe is not the right word because that's kind of like keeping up with the Joneses, but it's that perception that we develop in our own mind of what success, or I hate that word, but whatever that accomplishment might be. Um, when will that be enough? When once you get there, okay, when is it time to not rest on your laurels, but not worry so much about what you're actually doing and the audience.
Hmm.
And I don't know shit because I ain't never sold a book. So, what can I say,
Yeah, there's something that's I've read heard the term divine discontent. I think Anthony Storr quotes that in one of his books. I don't know who coined that phrase, but divine discontent is kind of like a restlessness within the spirit or within the person, and they just feel like they constantly have to keep pushing forward, and doing more and more. And there's like a sense of almost like an agony to the artist where they
right?
just never nothing is good, nothing is good enough. Or if it's good enough, it's like what's the next good enough thing? It's like go to the
Or how
next
can it
thing.
be
And
better? It's good enough, but
right,
it's not, or it's what I wanted, but it's not enough. I think that's really the way it takes for me is it's great, but it's not quite,
right.
you know. Um, the reality is we all judge ourselves.
Perfectionism.
I mean, whether it's writing or anything else, we set these standards for our own health, security, safety, our own procreation and these natural, God-given instincts. And we those things waver and the credit levels in each bank kind of varies from time to time. So if I'm hurting in a security state because of my financial resources, I might step on the toes of somebody else in my society level,
Right. Right.
or I might cut some corners or do some things unethical in order to achieve that satisfaction. But there's always another satisfaction that's necessary. There's always keeping up with the Joneses. I could get that Corvette I want, and that motherfucker next door is going to bring home his Ferrari, and and it's all in perception.
Hmm.
You know,
Right.
do I choose to see it that way or not? And sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But that's all on a level of how I've adapted to whatever it is that's driving that urge to write. Because that's the only way I've ever found to really get it out, is to either be directly hands-on of service to somebody or to write it out, and chew on it for a
Right.
while. Eventually it'll become a poem. I got 300 pieces that I've been working on for 10 years. And
Hmm.
there's
Nietzsche refers to something he called suffering from excess.
yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. And you know, um, on that topic, probably one of the greatest books I ever read is a book called The Christian Agnostic by a guy named Leslie Weatherhead.
Hmm.
It's from the UK, and he was a bishop in the Anglican Church. And he took a look at it all and he said, you know what? All the principles and the values and the morals are the same. The labels don't matter. Are you a good person or not? And, it's that simple. All the rules
Right.
and all the ceremony and pomp and circumstance is all man-made, you know, and that's not where
Right.
the answer lies. The answer lies in, having a best buddy that you want to call whatever name, that hangs out with you all the time and advises you and is there and comforts you and whatever. We all seek that. And just because I put a name on it and a face, it
Hmm.
may or may not actually do the trick. The key's in the core. That's still me looking outside myself to make myself feel better. And,
Right.
and
Character of the person.
rather than do that, I choose to write, at this point. And then when it's presentable, it'll be out there.
Right. Absolutely.
So, so in your writing career, did you see strange shifts from that initial introduction to people like Plath?
Yeah, I grew into looking to more, higher forms of poetry, what I would consider higher forms. Mostly, I got into like the French symbolists and I studied that and I just devour, everything I could find. Surrealism, I got into sonnets. I got deeply involved in reading Shakespeare at one point during a mental health crisis where I literally had a voice in my head say,
Mm.
if you don't read all of Shakespeare's work in 2 weeks, then everyone's going to hell and it's going to be your fault. And it was like a very bizarre experience. And
Sure.
I
But that's reading Shakespeare makes you feel like that. So,
started, but I didn't finish. So guess what? You're all going to hell, whatever.
right.
Right. I read half of it. I read half of his work in a week. I got halfway through and then I burned out. And then the next assignment was read scriptures, read biblical scriptures, the New Testament specifically in 12 hours, read all four gospels. And I think I did finish that, but I didn't get to the rest of it. So I didn't finish the whole New Testament. So you're still going to hell. Don't worry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's so funny how the world today, they quickly want to point to that book, but they forget the whole new part. They want to go to stoning people and judging them and hanging them and
Right.
torturing them and killing masses of people. They want to go back to that time. They forget the whole Jesus thing and what that was all about.
Right. Right. Judgment versus mercy.
Yeah, what? So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's the labels to me. I'm a big anti-fan of labels, just because they come with individual preconceived ideas. And like, if I say the word
Right. Ideologies.
divorce to you, you're going to think one thing based on your experience, and I'm going to think another. And so when you start getting real general in terms like that, I think, especially if things of the heart or the mind or the spirit or,
Right.
what actually makes us human, and different than the gods is, the thing that we forget the most or the easiest, because humans want to break it down and put it in order of some kind and interpret it for us. When if you just do what it says, you'll develop that relationship and it'll come or go as you need it. And you don't even have to call it Jesus or Buddha or nothing. You can just I called my invisible friend Jesus friend for a long time. I called him Elvis. I'm hanging out with Elvis. We go have a beer and and hopefully I wouldn't die in a car crash that night,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
so, and I didn't. So, you know what? Elvis is good to me. So,
People like to
praise
put
Elvis.
post-it notes on the soul.
Praise
Oh,
Elvis.
that's great. That was like he combed his hair back and all that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He gave me a first-hand introduction to gospel principles and rockabilly. So,
Okay. That's a good lesson in life.
the Reverend Horton Heat came after that, which,
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's true. I used to like them a lot.
yeah, so that would be, I would think, a similar situation. Elvis Jesus smash. Well, so
Right.
how many books do you actually have, Dustin? Is this the only one or the
No,
first?
no. I've this is my 14th poetry collection,
I thought so.
and I have several other. Like I have a fairy tale from Alien Buddha Press, and I have a collection of 2 short stories from Alien Buddha Press, and also a novella called "Be Not Afraid of What You May Find" from Alien Buddha Press, and a lot of poetry books across different publishers, like Phoenician Spider Press published one of my recent ones. I have one from Virsat Arts publication called The Nothing Epistle coming out. Several from the same publisher did Crime of the Extraordinary. Hawakal publishers out of India. But I have quite a few poetry collections. Mostly I focus on poetry.
Yeah, yeah. So this book is brand new. It's
Hmm.
on the market now, correct? Do you want to where
Yes.
should we go to buy that book while we're talking about it? Your book.
Amazon will have a copy of it. Amazon, you just look for Crime of the Extraordinary, Dustin Pickering, in their search, and then you should find it. Or you could just, if you're following me on Facebook or wherever else, I post links. I've been posting links.
One of the things I have started to do, if you're interested, send me a link and an image. I'll put it in the community, and it'll be there. People and use whatever link you want them to use, and I'll just put it out there, and
Absolutely, that'd be great.
guys can come and buy his book. Okay,
Okay,
so and you can do it from either us or
right.
Don or Dustin. So we'll do it that way. You want to read a little bit from it and give us a
Sure.
little background before you jump in?
Okay. So the publisher, I have these little notebooks. They're very small notebooks, and I was writing some poetry in those notebooks. And I came to my publisher, who'd published several of my previous collections. I said, I'm writing these little micro poems. And he said, you know what? Let's compile a book of these micro poems. I ended up writing the book in about a week and a half, and then going through the editing process with a poet in India named Sanjeev Sethi. That took about 2 weeks. We did it over the WhatsApp call, and then gradually it morphed into Crime of the Extraordinary, which is this book here.
Lovely.
And it's based on the Crime of the Extraordinary is based on Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. That's where I kind of pulled the title. And there's a line from one of the poems that says, "Love is crime of the extraordinary." And I'm thinking of the extraordinary man theory and crime and punishment, and I just crime. The theme sort of emerged from that, and so these are short poems. They're 8 lines or less, and basically each of them. I mean, a lot of them have to do with what I would call spiritual ecology, like the way that the interior life relates to the exterior, and vice versa. And I use a lot of um, kind of science terminologies and a little bit of environmental thought in some of these poems. I can read a couple if you like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
And you're welcome to read 2 or 3 if you want.
Okay.
I'm very intrigued. I will say, you were talking about some of the reading you did when you were earlier and like latching on to Sylvia Plath initially and things like that. Mine was a little bit different. Like on my dad's bookshelf, there were things like the Bukowski novels. It wasn't the
Hmm.
poetry stuff. So
Hmm.
those were pretty intriguing. But the thing that really got me the most, I think, was I don't know, man. I just think that there's a common theme here. You were reading Sylvia Plath, and I was reading Dostoevsky and Hermann Hesse and Sartre and folks like that,
Hmm.
which for as young as I was, really
Right.
made a mark. Now, I wouldn't say that I carry the knowledge of those books because they've been reread in pieces over the years,
Mhm.
but keying in on that one focused idea with Dostoevsky is extremely intriguing to me and really makes me want to read the book. So let's do it.
Okay, so I'm just picking some at random. This one's called Sweetness. This sweetness cannot last forever, but when I sleep, my thought transitions like a train into the darkest cracks. Peace is the sleight of hand at my doorway. Card tricksters announce virulent joys, intimacies we never knew. Six liner.
Yeah, I like that.
Oh, okay. Here's the one that I took. This is the one that really I think reflects the most impactful as far as the theme of Dostoevsky and the double, the idea of the double in a lot of his work, especially the novel The Double. It's called Theater of the Double. Theodore prospers at the lack of comprehensibility. Such a masterful crime Pro offers jaundice and jovial sympathy. The twin faced horror of amphibian morality does not align with deep medicine. Love is crime of the extraordinary. Five liner. Let me see. I have one that may interest some of your readers, some of your viewers, especially if the. Let me see if I can find it real quick. If you're really kind of we call it it's called workers patsy. You're like one of these guys that I know a lot of guys watching are probably very liberal, in that in terms. And this is a poem that's very opposed to Trumpism and hit some of his anti-immigrant sentiments. If I can find it real quick, it's an interesting poem, and it has a lot of there's a little bit of a pun, some puns to it. Getting there, I know I am. Here it is. Okay, workers patsy. Soften the load of hush money in your trumpets of thought. The staff is easily immigrant due to the overlooked overseer whose mind is occupied, just like Wall Street years ago. Can we beat the dog of fascism back?
Hmm. Yeah, I like that one. I'm sitting here listening. I really like that piece, actually. I'm gonna put it on a t-shirt or something. But I really like your reading, and I particularly like that piece because that's where my head
Mhm.
goes. And that's I have two legs, and one of them stays in various forms of activism. So and
Right.
and fighting, it's a good versus evil thing in my mind. But um, the other poems, like I feel that one immediately. The other
Hmm.
pieces, and including the ones I read out of the book, I feel like they work like in a series for me. It's like you read it,
Hmm.
it kind of hits you, and then you go back and ingest it again to make sure you got what you thought you got, and then I start working for understanding of what the words really mean.
Hmm.
And so I guess what I'm saying is that it feels like it hits me first, but I don't feel informed by hearing it one time or reading it one time. It feels like this deserves a deeper dive. And that's a great thing for a writer, I believe, and in life, whatever. But um, I think that you do that very well, whether it's intentional or not. Yeah, I mean,
It
you kind
is.
of
It's
drew
very
me in.
intentional.
You drew me right in down the timeline that works for me, and I can see where that would parallel for other people, even though their timeline is different than mine. That's music, you know. So,
Right.
so what do you see happening after this, or you know, what are your thoughts about the future? Assuming
I
we
have,
have.
assuming we have one. Yeah, there's the global climate change apocalypse, nuclear war coming on. There's the future of poetry is now, as I say. As the
Battle of the
more
egos everywhere.
the more conflict we have in the world, the more we need poetry to just propose the voice of humanity and speak for the individual soul and the individual heart and the individual mind. It's like, for me personally, I have another book coming out pretty soon called The Nothing Epistle. And it's sort of like my experiment with a Joycean stream of consciousness.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of riddles entwined within this book
Right.
it's two people who are in love with each other, who are sleeping, and their dreams kind of intertwine, and they create a world within this one. And the poem was reflecting of the entire network of dreams. So it's pretty interesting little experiment I did, and so that's coming out pretty soon out of India. That's a traditionally published volume, and some of the poems have been on my Facebook in the last couple of years. So I anticipate I will go through more heartbreak in the future because I'm just constantly finding myself with somebody that I love and then getting disappointed dramatically by their behavior or by the relationship. And so for me personally, I'll just feel the heartbreak to a small degree of what the world is going through. I'll be going through it myself in some way. You know, um, I
Yeah, man,
hopefully we can work this stuff
I
out.
got no advice on that one, but I know what a good motivator it can be for writing. That's that to be honest, that's how my style kind of developed is through a series of, little small crises that forced me to sit
Mm-hmm.
down and bleed all over the page because I didn't have a
Absolutely.
put it. And so I think that you're right on track with that. I think it's very true,
Definitely.
that.
That anxiety to me that comes with all that, it drives me to compulsively write. And it also drives me outside of what I'm doing at the moment. So it makes me kind of reflect on and like really think deeply and try to restructure my energies a little bit in different ways. It's pretty fascinating how that works. I have no idea what that is. I guess it unravels, your mind unravels, and you kind of go crazy to an extent.
It's a desensitization because
Mhm.
you see things that you think are real and they just kind of disappear or crumble, so you don't know what to
Right.
believe in. And look, I am probably the whiniest guy because I do it for my health, I do it for my emotions, I do it for my spirit, I do it for my business, and but those are ways that I voice my unhappiness with the world, not necessarily me or the
Right.
people that are around me. It's just
Hmm.
why did I get to be the special breed that gets to fight these battles instead of just having it, the work pay off like it should? Well, I don't have the answer to that. And the longer I spend trying to figure it out,
Right.
the longer I'm going to
Yeah.
waste, worrying about it. So
Hmm.
I,
It's a
I
question
am
with no
I'm
answer.
with you very much on the heartbreak thing. It's heartbreak or experience or trauma or whatever the case is. Any high energy event, I think that makes a mark, leaves either you know stacked up trauma, or you find a release like writing it out, or whatever your hobby or thing might be to get that out. And we just happen to choose a pen and paper and make stupid cartoon movies out of them.
I think it's universal in a lot of ways. Like some people just get lucky and they just have their life go well. But I think most people deal with struggles of some kind, and they're constantly struggling with trying to understand why those struggles exist. And so, I mean, it's
Well, mine has a
poetry to me is like balm for the soul. It's just like you
right.
read a good poem. Go
I,
ahead.
I agree 100%, man. It's not a judgmental thing at all. It's a human thing. We store that up and we release it however we find that release. And when it's not enough, we look for another way to do it better. Um, but the goal is to like I realize I'm not the greatest writer in the world, and I don't really care about that as long as what I'm writing today looks like the
Hmm.
way I want it to end up when I'm done with it. And I don't
Right,
do it. I don't
right.
necessarily do it for the accolades or for anybody to tell me how good my words are. I put it out there because I believe in the words and people deserve to read them and everybody else has them. So if I can put a place where people can go and put those words where we can go and flip through the library and, get some words that we need, then that's the world I'd like to build. So thanks for being a
Absolutely.
part of that, man. I appreciate it. And the
Thank
audience
you.
does
Yeah, you
too.
too. You too. It's definitely about the process rather than trying to, like look at the finished product. And it's not like a capitalist thing. You don't look at the product, you go, okay, sell this now. It's
Right.
more like the process of creating that really makes it beautiful. And then when you put it in the world, it's a gift. It's not a product, it's a gift.
Right. You're supposed to give a gift with no expectations.
Right.
And if there are rewards or paybacks to you, that's what the universe gives you. I feel great when I sneak behind somebody at the fast food place and buy her food for her because I know she's homeless. So I'll sneak and pay for her,
Right.
never, and she'll never know who did it,
Right.
but I feel good. And I
Right.
know
Right.
I made a difference that day. That's the kind of thing I like to do, but I'd like to do it in a big way too, with a big, platform that has people spitting their words and, speaking their truth and, getting it out there however you want to get it out there. And if I can't do it as a writer necessarily, completely, I got a lot of other skills that I can put to use to help make sure those words are there. And I've got enough friends and acumen to go out there and find people that will help to fill the space and that will make it fill itself. Because I mean, I got 300 videos out there, and all of them are poets or poems or, something related or some affiliate deal I've got trying to make a living, but that kind of stuff. But um, it's not separate from the writing itself. It's just a different kind of release, and you need certain tools to do certain things and I've chosen to go the path of a carnival barker as opposed to an artist necessarily. Not
Hmm.
to, not to demean my own art by any stretch of the imagination, but my art's the bait, you know, to where they can come and hear Dustin Pickering or read John Dorsey or, you know,
Hmm.
some S.A. Griffin or A. Razor from 5 years ago or, that kind of stuff and have it all kind of be in one place and everybody be able to call it home. So welcome home, my friend.
Thank you. I will make sure not to get mud on the couch.
I do it, so I don't know why you wouldn't.
My
I,
feet up on the
it only
back.
happens when I'm slinging mud, though. So if I'll just not.
Mudslinging
Well,
contests.
I think we've
My
had a
favorite.
productive session.
Uh-huh.
You want to read one to take us out, and
Okay,
you can stay online, and we'll say goodbye to the audience.
sure, I'll do that. Let's just pick one real quick. Okay. All right. This is Popper. I am the poorest writer with fewest words. Designate the interior life to elder birds. Golden wishes spread across their wings. I am neither prince nor pauper of the clime, where angels cloud my page. I write, though trees are screaming loudly in my ear.
There you go. That's the one to close on, my friend. Thank you so much for that. I like that. And I promise I like to do better research than I normally do or than I was able to do today. I've got other things going on and blah, blah, blah. But I make this commitment to you right here in public that I'm going to go back and read your book, man, because you're right in my veins. And didn't have a chance to read it all. I picked and chose, and I really want to go back and look at it for the piece of art that I believe it is. And
Thank you.
I thank you for sharing that with me and with the audience. And you sit tight, and we'll say goodbye to the audience. Thank you guys, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. Please check the descriptions. You will see links to all things social yet distanced. You'll see a link to Dustin's book, and I don't know, probably some kind of sales pitch because I'm getting hungry, guys. And I don't know if you noticed, but I need new teeth. So thanks for that. We appreciate you. Come back and see you soon. We're going to try to get a lot more regular in the actual broadcast and start doing some live stuff as well. So thanks, and we will see you next time.